the only way we can move people from the county to the city. Let me just speak to Mr. Bruce. Mr. Bruce has over 20 to 30-something years of HR. He is our HR person. And so this whole effort of getting employees from one system to the other, to look at the benefits package, to talk about what's comparable to make it work, that's Mr. Bruce. So he really has a heavy task at hand, but that's his area of expertise, and we're sure he would do it well. Next slide. These are the immediate staffing needs that mayor and council on day one need to make a decision on. Our role is to take them recommendations. I heard someone mention today, they said, oh, I'm upset because you've given the transition team the authority to appoint an interim city manager. That's not our role. I want everybody to be clear. We don't appoint anyone. We are a recommending body. What we will do is that we will advertise and interview for these positions, shortlisted, and take the short list to mayor and council to interview, and then decide. They may like them all. They may tell us to start over again. But at the end of the day, our role is to take them a recommendation, a set of recommendations, for them to interview them themselves so that they can make that selection. Because on day one, when the elected officials are sworn in, you gotta have a manager. I mean, you gotta have a manager. You gotta have a financial officer. You gotta have the human resources director, and you gotta have your interim city clerk. Because that night, as they're voting to approve, you gotta have the clerk, okay, that signs off all the documents, right? And needless to say, we must, the only one that I left off is that we have to have a city attorney, right? Okay, because all of your documents have to be legally sound. Why do we have to have some of these people in place? In order for us to receive our lost revenues, everybody know what loss is? Local option sales tax, okay? Which are monies that we haven't had access to since we've been in existing. Fulton County gets 14% of all of the loss, and of their 14%, 9 of that belongs to us, which means that on an annual basis, we would get anywhere from $25 to $30 million a year that we didn't have access to today. And some of those requirements is that you have to have a finance officer in place, you need a manager, and then you have to look at contracting 3 of those services or providing them yourself, which is fire, police, and sewer. And then on the city services requirement, the state law says that of a whole array of city services that you have to provide to be considered a city, the ones that we're looking at, of all the ones that I listed, fire, police, and all of those, planning and community development, code enforcement, and parks are the ones that we're looking at recommending simply because they're the smallest, right? And probably the easiest to transition over from one system to the other. Next slide. Here's the tough part: facilitation and provision of facilities. Next slide. What does that mean? Believe it or not, there are a lot of facilities and assets that are in the SSD that we have to make a recommendation in terms of whether or not mayor and council may want to purchase them or whether or not they don't. There are more than 32 and 5. We're actually waiting on Fulton County to produce us an asset list so we can see what our true assets are. But let's just talk about the ones that we do. We own 32, and most of those are parks, like Welcome All, Old National. Most of those facilities are in Parks and Rec, and then we have a couple of others. We lease 5. Where we are right now, we're talking with the county to determine the condition of not only these assets, but assets that exist beyond the 32 and the 5 that exist in the SSD, or we're impacted by their existence in the SSD, right? We're also talking to them about a list of assets that are located within the SSD, but we need to know what the estimate cost of purchase. As many of you are aware, the first lawsuit was Sandy Springs in Fulton County, right? And Sandy Springs won, and it was over this issue. You know, how much does a taxpayer have to pay for stuff we've already paid for? What's a reasonable price? I mean, we've paid for the park, we paid for the equipment, why are you gonna charge us again, right? So what we're trying to work out is the list of assets, but more so, what is the cost? They're gonna have to give us a cost of what they think we should pay, and then Roger and Josh are gonna go in and be the heavy hitters and get it down to a reasonable price, right? Next slide. The collection of taxes, fees, part 3. This is the easy part. Next slide. The commission, we're charged with making sure that there's certain mechanisms in place for the city to collect the following taxes and fees effective May 1st. Property taxes. Ferdinand has done a real good job, right? Somebody said no. He normally comes in with 99% of the collection rate. And so we're looking at the possibility of recommending that he continues to do that function on the behalf of the municipality. Local option sales tax. Josh did a great job in preparing the necessary paperwork that was required to go to the Department of Revenue before December the 31st of 2016. That paperwork is in. It lets them know and put everyone on notice our intent as it relates to the receipt of receiving our lost monies. Our anticipated date, the earliest would be May 30th if certain things are in place. The latest would be June 30th. And right now it's estimated that our share beginning this year per month will be $1.9 to $2 million, okay? Occupational taxes for business license and licensing fees and alcohol. Right now, in our revenue stream, our occupational taxes are bringing us anywhere between $6 and $8 million. And then our licensing fees and alcohol and others are bringing us about $11 million. So, you know, how soon we can get those over really crucial because those are our revenue streams that, you know, we want to make sure that we have. Next slide. The negotiation of intergovernmental agreements in preparation of establishment of the new city. Next slide. Okay, in talking with the county, these are the items that need to go to be discussed in either one, two, or several IGAs, right? It's our job to look at these services, but also decide whether or not Fulton County is the only option. Does that make sense? Because we want the best price. To give you an example, these are 911 services, animal control, collection of taxes, court services, management of personnel, park facilities, public service facilities and assets, T-slots, and other transportation need, rental space, service delivery of specific services, and transfer station. Let's just use 911 for an example. Fulton County now provides 911, but there are other municipalities in the area that also provide 911. The northern part of the county actually have a one system in which all of the cities are part of their 911. And then we have cities down here like College Park and others that have 911. That may be open to giving us a better price than the county, right? That's an option. All options on the table. Animal control is the same thing. You've got a couple of jurisdictions around us that provide animal control. That may be an option in addition to the county, but the county pretty much does most of the animal control for all of Fulton County. So those are just some examples. Rental space. We're going to talk to the county about possible rental space because, again, on May 1, we have 8 employees. And so we're looking at space that would at least accommodate all of the staff, the elected officials, and the interim city manager, finance, and HR. Next slide. Finance. This is a numbers thing, right? You know, you can do anything with numbers, and you can put numbers anywhere, right? And you can hide numbers anywhere. Kelvin is doing a great job with the assistance of a couple of folks to dig through those numbers, to ask the hard questions, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that every single dime that is owed us, we get. My preview of how the money has been spent, and I think a couple of you have heard me say that, based on my review of the numbers, I really feel that we've been a real slush fund for the county for the last 10 years. And I'm glad that the slush fund will be taken off the table and we won't be subsidizing everybody else in Fulton County. That's just me. Next slide. Zoning moratorium, we actually sent a letter to the Board of Commissioners asking them to put a moratorium on zoning and development. Why? Because we don't want people rushing to the Board of Commissioners, throwing in applications on stuff that don't represent us. We want them to halt, cease and desist, okay? Do a moratorium that allows us, the city, time to put our planners in place, to put our procedures in place, to talk about what the vision is, and let us control our own development and our destiny. That's why we became a city, to take our development rights out of the hands of 7 folks, in which only 1 lives in our city. We want to control our own destiny. So we've asked that the zoning moratorium will be in place. Commissioner Darnell has outright said that she's not going to support it. That recommendation is supposed to be voted on by the Board of Commissioners at the next meeting, and we're hopeful that the votes will pass to put the moratorium in place. Next slide. We want to thank the transition team. Fulton County has a counterpart of employees that have been working with us to try to give us the information that we need. Dick Anderson, County Manager, Todd Long, Chief Operating Officer, Sharon Whitmore, Chief Financial Officer, Patrice Hooker, the attorney, and Gary Stiles, who's the police chief. So all of the information and the questions that we've been asking, they're being gracious in terms of giving us the information. So we have to keep digging. Next slide. I want it to be clear when everyone leaves here tonight, we don't appoint, we don't hire, we don't obligate. That's not our role. But our role is to put before mayor and council on day 1 a set of recommendations that gives them choices to become operational on day 1. Does that make sense? Okay. Now I'm going to sit down. All of you have questions, and Yoda and Josh is going to answer them for you, right? If you have cards and questions, would you raise your hand? Okay, and these people will pick up your cards.
While you're doing that, I wanted to make you aware of something else. There's a group of people that came to my office, and what I've learned in this process is that people get out on the internet and they say anything and everything, whether they know what they're talking about or not. And while it's a good thing to have this social media because it gives us a chance to communicate, it's also not good because people are communicating things that are just not true or accurate. And one of them is that we are trying to fast track some kind of process to let builders and developers put up warehouses before the new city actually comes up. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. We are trying, by basically what Camilla just said, we are trying to stop them from doing any kind of zoning or construction until we have an opportunity to sit our mayor and city council down. So when you see things out there that don't make any sense, I'm at the state level. I'm not at the county level. I have no authority to do anything as it relates to zoning from my role in the General Assembly. So I wanted to get that out because I've seen stuff out there. The other thing is that there are people who came by my office that want to change the name of South Fulton Parkway. And at this particular point, I've told them that I was not going to entertain that, again, because I think that once we have our mayor and city council, they should have some opportunity to participate in any discussions around changing the names of any of our roads that pass through our city. Part of the reason why they want to do that, they're talking about changing it all the way from the Atlanta airport all the way down to, what's the name of the development down by Douglas County? Foxhall. Yeah, all the way down to Foxhall. And the people who own Foxhall, they want to redevelop that area and make it into a destination point, a luxury resort-type destination point, and they want to control the zoning that takes place leading up to it. And that's actually in Douglas County. That's not even in Fulton County. And so at this particular point, as I said, I'm not entertaining any effort to change the name of any road in our city until our mayor and city council comes on board. And then once they're on board, they will have to go through whatever process is established for changing names, which I hope will include participation from the public in that process. So I'm telling you all this because as you see things out on the internet, I don't want you to believe things that you see out there and take them as fact. We want to make sure you have the facts. And if you see something out there that looks strange or looks like, why are they doing this, pick up the phone. We all have phones, and if you, I know she told you to take your pen out. I'm going to give you my number. It's 678-428-8067. And that's this phone right here. And I have it with me most of the time. If I'm in a meeting or something, I'm not going to answer it. Every time I've given out that number, somebody dialed it to see if it really rang. But somebody's trying to do that now, probably. 678-428-8067. Okay, so now we're going to take your questions. This works better if I put my glasses on. Will the city adopt the solid waste plan that the county was working on? I don't know the answer to that question, to be honest with you. At this particular point in time, all I understand, and you guys can chime in, is that we're going to continue with the same wastewater plan that we have going right now. And what might happen over a period of time, I don't want to say it's going to happen or not happen because that will be up to the mayor and city council to make that decision. But there's no immediate plan to do anything other than what we're already doing with regard to wastewater services. Do you guys know anything different than that? Okay.
Will we have our own water department and garbage pickup? 2, will we pay Fulton County taxes and city taxes? Okay, on the first one is that water is controlled by the city of Atlanta. We don't control our water. Fulton County water is only north of the city. So everyone south of 20, we're on Atlanta water. Someone has asked, well, do we have to always be on Atlanta water? No, but Atlanta owns the line, right? Y'all remember when they deregulated gas? Atlanta Light and Gas still own the lines, right? Even though you had all these different service providers. But the water stays with the city of Atlanta, unless somewhere down the road the city chooses to do anything. In terms of your garbage pickup, typically what municipalities do, they put out an RFP for garbage service, which is recyclables and trash. And normally your rate goes down. And it goes down because of the volume of individuals that are a part of one source. Does that make sense? And typically your service gets better. You normally have more pickups. You normally have more options. But typically how this would work is that mayor and council would send out a proposal, and all of the big companies normally bid on them, BFI, Waste Management, and everybody else. And then the city negotiates with one of those providers in terms of bringing you the best rate and the best service. Oh, okay. Will you pay Fulton County? Will you pay them now? If you look at your SSD bill, what you pay now is what you're going to pay. If you look on that bill, it has it all broken down. The last time you looked at your tax bill that Ferdinand sent you in the SSD, he broke out all your tax responsibilities, including school. that is where it's going to remain. I think Mr. Bruce can speak to whether or not that will increase.
Yeah, I think the way the question was, as I looked at it, I think whoever asked it was trying to figure out, are we going to pay additional taxes? Are we going to pay a city tax and a county tax? And is the city tax going to be added, basically? Are we going to increase the taxes? The answer is no. If you look at your tax bill, as was just mentioned, it's broken out into pieces. One of the pieces is, it says Special Service Tax District. And that piece of it will eventually just say City of South Fulton. We are paying the city, we're paying the county right now to provide services that would normally be provided by a city if we had one. So nothing's going to change in that regard. The county is still going to be providing us services, certain services. They will be providing the courts system. They'll provide the libraries. They'll provide the sheriff's department and all the things that the sheriff does, the courts and all this kind of stuff. And there are other things that they will temporarily be providing until we can negotiate with them around arts and things of that nature. So at this particular point, your taxes, there's no reason for your taxes to change other than that you'll be paying them to somebody else to provide the services that you're going to get. Everybody understand that? Okay.
We got a question that was, how will the general public be given an opportunity to express their desires for the kind of development and growth for the new city beyond the desires of the newly elected body? Couple ways. One, there is a state law, and I'm thinking about zoning, called the Zoning Procedures Law, and it puts in place a lot of requirements in terms of notice and public hearing, all of which can be, the new city will be bound to. So there are going to be state mandated notice provisions, hearing provisions, all in accordance that the city's going to have to follow, and that's a minimum way to do it. Now the city, the elected mayor and council can decide that they want to have more stringent requirements than the Zoning Procedures Law and have more notice and more hearings, but that would be up to them. But there are minimum safeguards put in place by state law currently.
Is it? Okay. Do we know how many staff members reside in the city of South Fulton? No, we don't. In terms of, there's no legal requirement for all of the employees of the city to live in the city, just like some of you work somewhere outside of where you live. And we are looking at what we can legally do to require the police officers, once we bring them on board, the police and fire employees, to see if we can legally ask them to be in the city. I don't know that we can do that. I don't know that we could do that, but there are people who are looking at it. There's another part to this that says, is there an agreement in place that excludes any of the transition members from being employees of the county? The answer to that is no. There is no agreement in place. Anybody that's qualified and applies and goes through the process, if they can add value to the city, we should let them do it. There is a requirement, none of us can run for office in the city. That was the agreement we made with the governor when we agreed to be on the transition team. We cannot seek office this first go around. To my knowledge, nobody wants to seek office at any point. And you know, I serve in the General Assembly. I'm perfectly comfortable with being there for as long as you'll allow me to serve you there. The truth be told is that you're going to need somebody with the experience and length of service that I have in the General Assembly, because we're going to have to make changes to our charter over time. The charter that we have is not the charter that we initially put in place in terms when we were trying to set up the city. But if you know anything about how the General Assembly operates, There's no bill that starts out one way and ends up the way it started out. Everybody's making changes to it as we go through the process. And they made changes to our charter to make it look almost identical to other city charters that came on board over the last few years. And but we're not, as was explained earlier, we're not those other cities. We have different needs down here. We have different things that we want to do. So over time, we're going to have to put in what we call local legislation to make changes. One change that is being worked on as we speak, hopefully we'll get it through this session, well, two things. One is that we will bring, and I brought a map with me, I think I have it with me. We'll bring a portion of Fulton Industrial Boulevard that was legally protected from being part of any city. We are hoping that we will get legislation through. I've already gotten it out of the House. It is over in the Senate now. That would allow the citizens in Fulton County to lift that restriction. And once that restriction is lifted, that area will automatically become part of our new city, adding about another $5 to $6 million to our revenue stream. So we're working on that now. The other thing that we're working on now is to change how whoever the mayor is, how that mayor will be able to vote. As we speak, there's 8 members, 8 elected officials, 7 council persons, and 1 mayor. And there was a mistake made when we drew up the legislation that gave the mayor the ability to vote right along with the city council people. That was not the intent. We didn't catch it, but we've now caught it. And what will happen is that it's being changed so that the mayor will only be able to vote to break a tie or to create a quorum. If we have 8 people, you can end up with a tie every single time if we don't change that. Everybody with me? Okay, so that's the answer to that question.
Okay, this is an attack video. Said info regarding South Fulton City viability was erroneous. All lies. There is a lot of money that there's a lot less money than what was projected. So a tax hike will be needed. Please address this. I think Representative Bruce addressed it already, but let me just say this. When we were fighting for us to have the right to become a city, there was so much misinformation out there in which you as a citizen could have gone to the Fulton County's website and got. We didn't tell citizens anything other than what Fulton County provided. If you want to know if we were financially viable, Fulton County every year publishes the financial condition of the service district. And every year, for the last 10 years, not us, but the county has said we had a surplus when all of our bills was paid. The county numbers showed that we were viable. These were not numbers that were made up. These were numbers legally published by Fulton County. And in fact, you can go on the website today, and it will show you all of the budgets for the last 10 years. So you don't have to believe what we're saying. The facts are there. What cityhood allows us to do is have access to revenues that we didn't have access to before, because it required you to be a city in order to have access to those revenues. 1, local option sales tax. You had to be a city to get it. We couldn't get it before, and as I shared with you earlier, there's anywhere from $25 to $30 million of revenues that we would not have had access to if we were not a city. The other is franchise fees. Franchise fees go to municipalities. So there are other revenue streams out there that we have access to. Before, we couldn't apply for grants because we were not a municipality. So there are all type of revenue streams out there that we now have an opportunity to have that we would not have had if we were not a city. And again, we've always been financially viable, not based on what we said, but what the county produced.
And the other piece of that too, when you have, it's a state law. You know, it's called the Schaefer Amendment, and she addressed it earlier.